INFJs are often described as insightful, empathic, and even mysterious. They're known for picking up on things others miss and caring deeply about the people around them. But here's the strange part. Many INFJs don't realize how powerful they actually are. They go through life feeling average, sometimes even invisible, without ever noticing the unique abilities they bring to the world. This isn't just about modesty. It's something deeper. INFJs often overlook their own strengths, even when those strengths are changing lives. They might help others feel understood, spot hidden truths, or guide people through emotional storms, all without thinking twice about it. To them, it just feels normal. But what's normal to the INFJ often seems incredible to others. The way they think, feel, and connect is rare. And when they fully understand their own power, they can stop holding back and start stepping into the role they were meant to play. In this video, we're going to explore 6 key reasons why INFJs rarely recognize their own superpowers. These insights may help INFJs understand themselves in a new way, and finally give themselves the credit they deserve. Background: understanding INFJs' cognitive functions. To understand why INFJs often miss their own strengths, we have to look at how their mind works. INFJs are guided by a unique combination of mental functions, the most dominant being introverted intuition, or NI. This function is what gives INFJs their deep insights, ability to see patterns, and strong gut instincts. Introverted intuition is different from regular logic or observation. It doesn't look at the world through facts and numbers. Instead, it sees connections between ideas, events, and emotions that most people overlook. INFJs use this intuition to look beyond the surface. They often understand people's motives before they're spoken and sense outcomes before they happen. But because this happens so naturally for them, they don't always realize how unusual it is. They might think everyone processes information this way. They might assume that sensing patterns or feeling emotionally connected to a deeper truth is something everyone does. So they don't treat it as a superpower. They treat it as basic thinking. Alongside NI, INFJs also use extroverted feeling, or FE. This is what makes them so in tune with the emotions of others. They can read the room with almost no effort, often adjusting their tone or behavior to help someone feel more comfortable. This makes them supportive friends, attentive partners, and often natural counselors, even if they never take on that role officially. But again, this trait can go unnoticed. INFJs often believe they're just being nice or trying to help, when in fact, they're using a high-level emotional intelligence that most people don't have. Their ability to understand how someone feels without being told is not something everyone can do. It's a strength that takes sensitivity and awareness. Then there's introverted thinking, T, and extroverted sensing, HSC, which are less dominant but still part of the INFJ's personality. TI helps them analyze ideas quietly, often refining their thoughts before they speak. This adds depth and precision to their conversations, but because it's so internal, even the INFJ may not notice how much mental work they're doing behind the scenes. Extroverted. Sensing is the least developed of the 4, and it gives INFJs moments of sharp awareness of their environment. This may show up in their appreciation for beauty, detail, or the way someone says something. It's not constant, but it adds color and texture to their intuitive observations. Altogether, these functions give INFJs a unique mental setup, one that blends deep intuition, emotional intelligence, quiet analysis, and occasional bursts of sensory clarity. It's a mix that allows them to see, feel, and understand the world in ways that are hard to explain. But here's the catch. Because all this processing happens in the background, and because it often feels effortless to the INFJ, they don't always realize it's special. They might assume their way of thinking is normal, and when no one else points it out, they continue through life without recognizing the full scope of their abilities. That's why this video is important. When INFJs understand how their cognitive functions work and how rare that combination really is, they can begin to see their natural habits not as quirks, but as the building blocks of their hidden superpowers. Reason number 1. Their superpowers feel normal to them. The first reason INFJs often overlook their superpowers is because those powers feel completely normal. When something comes naturally to you, you don't think of it as impressive. You assume everyone else sees, thinks, and feels the way you do. That's exactly what happens with INFJs and their strengths. Let's say an INFJ walks into a room and immediately senses tension. They know something's wrong, even though no one has said a word. To them, this feels obvious. Pause. But to the people around them, it's often shocking. How did they know? How could they tell? What gave it away? The INFJ might shrug and say, "I just felt it." And that's the truth. They did. But the real truth is, not everyone can do that. This happens with a lot of INFJ traits. Their ability to see the big picture, their instinct for helping others work through emotional pain, their habit of asking deep, thoughtful questions that cut right to the heart of an issue. These are rare skills. But because INFJs have always had them, they don't stand out in their own mind. Imagine being able to breathe underwater from birth. If no one tells you that other people can't do that, you'll never think of it as a superpower. You'll think it's just what people do. That's what life is like for many INFJs. They move through the world with abilities most people admire, but they don't even realize they're doing anything special. This belief is often reinforced by silence. INFJs tend to be private, low-key people. They don't go around advertising their abilities. And because many of their strengths are subtle, people don't always know how to describe or compliment them. Someone might say, "You're easy to talk to," or "You always know what I need," but rarely will someone say, "You have an amazing ability to emotionally disarm people in seconds and make them feel safe," even though that might be exactly what's happening. Without direct feedback, INFJs stay in the dark. They keep assuming that their superpowers are just basic personality traits. And over time, this can lead to underestimating themselves, even doubting their value. This also explains why some INFJs feel unfulfilled or misunderstood. They may know they're capable of something deeper, but can't quite name it. They might sense they have talents that don't fit into standard career paths or social roles. When no one names those talents, the INFJ starts to believe they're invisible, or worse, that they don't matter. Another reason INFJs don't see their strengths is that they're not flashy. Their power doesn't look like loud confidence, fast decision-making, or public achievements. It shows up in one-on-one conversations, quiet insights, and deeply personal breakthroughs. And because those moments happen in private, there's no spotlight to confirm their impact. Even when others are amazed by the INFJ's insight, the INFJ might downplay it. They'll say, "It was nothing," or "I just got lucky." That habit of brushing off their impact keeps them from seeing the pattern. They miss the signs that their intuition is consistently right. They miss the evidence that they make people feel better without even trying. They miss the truth that their normal is actually extraordinary. To change this, INFJs need to start recognizing how their everyday behaviors affect others. They need to notice when people open up to them instantly, when strangers tell them their life story, when a friend says, "You always know what to say." These aren't coincidences. They're signs of something powerful. When INFJs finally realize that their version of normal is rare, everything starts to shift. They begin to carry themselves with more confidence. They start saying yes to opportunities that once felt too big. And most importantly, they stop hiding who they are, because they finally see what they bring to the world. Reason number 2, they focus on others' needs over their own. INFJs are known for being some of the most caring and compassionate people. They are constantly tuned in to what others are feeling, what they need, and how to help. But this same strength is one of the biggest reasons INFJs don't recognize their own superpowers. They spend so much time focusing on everyone else that they forget to see themselves. It's natural for the INFJ to prioritize others. Their personality is wired that way. Their secondary function, extroverted feeling, makes them deeply aware of the emotional climate around them. If someone is in pain, the INFJ feels it. If someone is uncomfortable, the INFJ picks up on it almost instantly. And without thinking, they shift their energy to support that person. This happens all the time, at work, at home, even in casual conversations. INFJs often take on the role of emotional caretaker without being asked. They listen, they validate, they advise, and they comfort. It's not something they do for attention or praise. They do it because it feels right. It's part of who they are. But because their attention is always turned outward, INFJs rarely take the time to look inward and ask, what are my strengths? Or, what am I great at? They are so used to helping others feel seen that they forget to see themselves. And because their impact is often quiet and behind the scenes, no one else is pointing it out either. This habit of self-neglect starts early. Many INFJs grow up being the responsible one, the mature one, or the peacemaker. They learn to stay calm, keep others happy, and hold things together. But no one teaches them to notice their own needs. So as they get older, they keep putting themselves last, without realizing the cost. When they do stop to reflect, INFJs often focus on what they haven't done, rather than what they've accomplished. They might think about the friend they couldn't save, the mistake they made in a conversation, or the time they missed a sign they now feel they should have seen. Their compassion for others doesn't always extend to themselves. This pattern becomes even more complicated when others start to rely on them. Once people realize how helpful and emotionally available the INFJ is, they start coming to them more often. And because the INFJ rarely says no, their own needs get pushed further and further down the list. This includes the need to recognize and celebrate their own abilities. In some cases, this can lead to burnout or emotional numbness. The INFJ feels disconnected from themselves, not because they lack worth, but because they've spent too long ignoring it. They have poured so much energy into everyone else that there's nothing left for self-awareness. Even when someone compliments them, INFJs often brush it off. They assume the person is just being nice. Or they quietly think, if they only knew how much I still need to work on. This constant focus on others makes it nearly impossible to step back and say, wait, what I just did was actually pretty amazing. What INFJs need to remember is that focusing on themselves doesn't mean they're being selfish. In fact, the more they understand their own value, the better they can support others in a healthy way. Self-awareness strengthens their impact, and when they finally take a moment to see the truth of who they are, they start to realize how much power they have been carrying all along. Reason number 3, they are constantly seeking self-improvement. Another reason INFJs don't notice their own superpowers is because they're always chasing growth. While that sounds like a good thing, and often is, it can keep them stuck in a mindset where they never feel good enough. They see where they want to go, but they forget to look at how far they've already come. INFJs tend to be hard on themselves. They set high standards. They expect their relationships to be meaningful, their actions to reflect their values, and their thoughts to always line up with their feelings. When they fall short, even in small ways, they see it as something they need to fix. This mindset pushes them to grow, but it also makes it difficult for them to appreciate what they already do well. They look at their strengths and think, that's just the starting point. I need to do more. While others might be impressed by their insight, empathy, or clarity, the INFJ is thinking about how they could improve those traits, not recognizing how rare they already are. This is also tied to their perfectionism. INFJs want things to be done the right way, not just for themselves, but for everyone. They want their words to be thoughtful, their support to be meaningful, and their choices to align with a greater purpose. That level of care is admirable, but it can also make them blind to their progress. Because they're always focused on the next level of growth, they miss the strengths that are already fully formed. They don't see their empathy as a superpower. They see it as something they haven't mastered yet. They don't see their intuition as sharp. They see it as something that still lets them down sometimes. The truth is, INFJs already have strengths most people admire. But if they're always focused on becoming better, they never feel like they've arrived. And that constant striving can make them feel inadequate, even when they're actually performing at an incredibly high level. To shift this, INFJs need to pause and take stock. They need to look back at moments when they helped someone, spoke the truth, followed their gut, or stood up for what mattered. These are signs of their power in action. And recognizing that doesn't mean they've stopped growing. It means they're learning to grow with gratitude instead of constant pressure. Reason number 4, INFJs They receive little external validation. One of the biggest reasons INFJs don't recognize their own superpowers is that they don't hear it from others. While some personality types get regular praise for their work, INFJs often move through life quietly, doing powerful things without fanfare and without feedback. Their strengths are subtle. They don't walk into a room and dominate a conversation. They don't chase the spotlight. Instead, they observe, reflect, and connect one-on-one. They help people through tough moments. They offer insight that changes someone's mindset. But because they do this quietly, it often goes unnoticed. Even when they make a big impact, people may not realize just how much they helped. A friend might feel lighter after talking to an INFJ, but not know how to put that into words. A coworker might feel guided by their calm presence, but never say thank you. Over time, this lack of acknowledgement takes a toll. INFJs don't need constant praise, but they do need some recognition. When they never hear that they're doing well, they start to wonder if they're really helping. They second-guess their instincts, and that makes it even harder to see their own value. They also don't ask for feedback. INFJs aren't the type to say, "Was that good enough?" or "Did I help you?" They often assume that if something mattered, the other person will say so. But people don't always give feedback, even when they're deeply moved. And without that reflection, the INFJ feels like they're working in the dark. This lack of validation becomes a cycle. The INFJ does something meaningful, hears nothing, and assumes it wasn't that important. They try harder, still nothing. Eventually, they convince themselves that their efforts are just average, when in reality, they're often extraordinary. What INFJs need is to start looking at patterns. If people always turn to them for support, if strangers confide in them without prompting, if friends say, "I don't know how you do it," these are signs. Noticing those signs helps INFJs recognize their impact, even when others don't say it directly. And over time, that quiet awareness becomes the validation they need. They begin to trust that their presence matters, even when it's not always acknowledged. Because some of the most powerful superpowers in the world are the ones no one sees, but everyone feels. Reason number 5. Their strengths are often abstract and intangible. INFJs don't usually shine through traditional skills you can list on a resume. Their strengths are invisible, abstract, and hard to define. Things like emotional awareness, intuitive understanding, quiet leadership, and deep insight don't come with certificates or applause. That's a big reason why INFJs often overlook their own superpowers. In many settings, people are rewarded for clear, measurable things: closing sales, winning competitions, giving bold presentations. INFJs, however, operate behind the scenes. They change the tone of a room with their presence. They help someone make a life decision during a quiet talk. They sense emotional undercurrents that others miss. But because there's no obvious proof, those actions are rarely labeled as powerful. Even INFJs struggle to explain what they do. Try putting "skilled in emotional realignment" or "expert at feeling the truth no one says out loud" on a resume. It doesn't translate. So INFJs assume their gifts aren't real strengths. They believe they're just being a good listener or noticing small things. But in reality, those qualities are rare and deeply impactful. Their intuition is another example. INFJs often have strong gut feelings about people and situations. They can predict how events will unfold or sense a person's true character early on. But because this knowledge doesn't come from hard data, INFJs question it. They think, "I don't have proof, so maybe I'm just overthinking." When in truth, they're seeing something others can't. Empathy is the same way. INFJs don't just understand someone's pain, they feel it. They can sit with someone in silence and still provide comfort. That's a powerful emotional gift. But it doesn't come with medals or titles. It often goes unseen, except by the people who benefit from it. This invisibility causes INFJs to doubt themselves. They don't see what they do as special because the world doesn't always celebrate it. Their gifts aren't loud, and they don't create instant results. But they do create lasting ones. They change people from the inside out. That takes time and quiet strength. It also means INFJs must learn to value their impact on their own terms. They have to stop measuring success by what can be seen and start trusting what can be felt. When someone walks away from a conversation feeling lighter, clearer, or more understood, that's the work of an INFJ's superpower in action. Their challenge is learning to name it, to see empathy, intuition, and emotional depth as real strengths, even if they don't come with obvious rewards. Once they do, they start showing up with more purpose and with pride in what they've always done naturally. Reason number 6, they fear appearing arrogant or self-centered. INFJs don't like drawing attention to themselves. Even when they know they've done something well, they hesitate to say it out loud. One major reason INFJs don't recognize their superpowers is because they're afraid of sounding arrogant. The idea of bragging or taking up too much space makes them uncomfortable. They have often been the quiet one in the room, the person who lets others speak first, the one who observes before acting. That humility is part of their strength, but it can also hold them back. When they do something powerful, their first instinct isn't to celebrate it. It's to downplay it or give credit to someone else. Part of this comes from how they see the world. INFJs believe that everyone has value. They don't see themselves as more important than others. So when they notice their own strengths, they often push them aside, thinking, it's not a big deal. They don't want to seem like they think they're better than anyone. This creates an internal conflict. On one hand, they want to live with purpose and use their gifts. On the other, they don't want to make others uncomfortable or come across as self-centered, so they shrink. They keep their talents quiet, and in doing so, they start to forget they even have them. This fear of arrogance also keeps them from acknowledging progress. When they learn something new or reach a goal, they may act like it's nothing. If someone praises them, they quickly change the subject. They're not fishing for compliments, they're avoiding them altogether. Over time, this builds a habit of invisibility. INFJs become so good at hiding their strengths that even they can't find them anymore. They lose the ability to see themselves clearly because they've trained their brain to look away every time a moment of pride comes up. But recognizing your gifts isn't arrogance. It's awareness. It's the ability to say, I'm good at this, and I can use it to help others. INFJs need to realize that confidence doesn't mean ego. It means stepping into their power without apology. The world needs what INFJs bring: their insight, their empathy, their quiet leadership. Hiding it out of fear doesn't help anyone. In fact, it does the opposite. When INFJs hold back, the people around them miss out on something important. It's okay to own your gifts. It's okay to say, I have something to offer. That's not arrogance, it's truth. And when INFJs begin to believe that truth, they stop shrinking. They start showing up fully. And in doing so, they finally see the power that was always there. INFJs carry powerful traits: deep insight, quiet strength, emotional wisdom, and unshakable empathy. But for many of them, these gifts go unnoticed, not because they aren't real, but because they're subtle, natural, quiet. And INFJs are often too focused on helping others, growing, or staying humble to recognize their own brilliance. They think their strengths are nothing special because they've always had them. They look for external proof and don't get much. They doubt what they can't measure. They fear being seen as self-centered. All of this keeps them from seeing who they truly are. But that can change. When an INFJ starts to look inward with honesty and care, not criticism, they begin to see what they've been missing. They start to notice how often people trust them, how deeply they connect, how often their words change someone's path. And they realize they've had superpowers all along. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about seeing the truth in who they already are. Quiet doesn't mean weak, and humble doesn't mean invisible. INFJs don't need to shout to be powerful. They just need to start listening to themselves.